الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The name of the next section is The Characteristics of the Prayer. This chapter deals with the description of the ritual prayer, including its essentials and manner. The text Al-Azhar includes the statement, quote, "It consists of 2 units, 3 units, or 4 units," end quote. That is to say that the ritual prayer will consist of either 2 complete units, such as the dawn prayer, 3 units, such as the sunset prayer, or 4 units, such as the rest of them. During travel, the 4-unit prayers are abbreviated to 2. The author begins by saying, its obligations, that is, those things that if one were to neglect, the prayer would be invalidated, are 9. Al-Azhar mentions that the obligations are 10. The first of the essential obligations mentioned in this text is intention. One makes the intention in the heart at the time of the opening declaration of Allahu Akbar or before it. One simply intends the prayer that one intends to perform, for example, the noon prayer. The second essential obligation is the opening declaration of Allahu Akbar. It is an essential that one stands during the opening declaration unless one has a valid excuse not to stand. The only statement which is valid is Allahu Akbar. No other declaration is valid. Even if the declaration means the same, such as Allahu Kabir or Allahu Al-Azim, the prayer would still be invalidated without the words Allahu Akbar. The third essential is, the author says, the standing during the recitation of Al-Fatiha and 3 verses after it. The standing is what is obligatory. This is not due to the recitation because even if the recitation is faulty, standing during it would be obligatory. If one has some difficulty standing, one should try to stand for the recitation of at least one of the units. That would be sufficient. According to Al-Azhar, it would even be sufficient for one to stand for some of the recitation of one unit and some of the recitation of another. Although the present text does not mention the recitation of Al-Fatiha and 3 verses as separate obligations, it is stated to be the 4th essential obligation in Al-Azhar. The author says, the recitation is silent for the 2 noon prayers and audible for other than them. This would include the sunset, evening, dawn, Friday congregational, and the Eid prayers, as well as the 2-unit prayers for the circumambulation of the Kaaba. As for the audibility of the recitation, the minimum should be that the person next to him should be able to hear him. There is no maximum of audibility. The woman's audible recitation should be lesser than that. The minimum of the silent recitation is that one can hear oneself only. That is, only the reciter should be able to hear himself. The maximum of the silent recitation is when one's ears cannot hear it. The author says, the recitation of the Imam relieves the listener except for the 2 noon prayers. That is, the one praying behind the Imam is to not recite anything behind the Imam for the first 2 units of an audible prayer. As for the person who has not yet memorized Al-Fatiha, he or she is exempted from reciting it until they have memorized it. Instead, the person is to recite the tasbih in its place. The tasbih is recited 3 times and consists of the wording Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Once again, this particular tasbih is recited 3 times in the case of a person did not or was not able to remember or memorize the Al-Fatiha. The 4th obligation, according to this text, and the 5th obligation, according to Al-Azhar, is the bowings. It refers to the bending of the body from the waist, with the hands firmly on the knees. The 5th obligation, according to this text, and the 6th obligation in the Al-Azhar is stillness after doing so, until every joint is fully settled, otherwise it is invalidated. It refers to the settling of the body and limbs in the standing position before and after the bowing. If one is not settled completely before the bowing and after it, the prayer would be invalidated. The 6th obligation, according to this text, and the 7th, according to Al-Azhar, is the prostrations, or else it would be invalid. The settling of the 7 limbs on the ground must be all at once and long enough for the tasbih to be recited. One must prostrate on the forehead without any impediment between it and the ground. In the case of a cap or turban, one must prostrate until at least a portion of the forehead makes contact with the ground. If one fears harm from extreme heat or cold, one can place something on the ground to prostrate on. The two palms must be on the ground completely. If one places the back of both hands on the ground or the sides of the hands, the prostration would be considered invalid. Also, if one places the palm of one hand on the ground and the back of the other hand on the ground, the prostration would be considered invalid. If one were to raise one of the 7 limbs during the prostration and lay it back down, according to the school, such action would not invalidate the prayer. The exception is if there were lots of movement while doing so. The 7th obligation according to this text and the 8th according to Al-Azhar is sitting, with the limbs completely settled between every 2 prostrations with the right foot extended up and the left laying down. Otherwise, it, that is the prayer, is invalidated if one did so intentionally. If one is not able to sit like such person is obligated to sit on the left hip with both feet laying to the side. One is also not to sit with the left foot extended and the right foot laying down. The 8th obligation according to this text and the 9th according to Al-Azhar is the 2 testimonies of faith. It is when one says the following: أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. It is obligatory according to us, and the prayers upon the Prophet and his progeny is also considered obligatory according to the school. According to the school, it is to recite in the sitting of the last unit of the prayer. It is when one says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Once again, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The 9th obligation according to this text and the 10th according to Al-Azhar is the salutations to the right and left with turning, insomuch that the one behind the praying person can see the cheeks. It is obligatory that the person turn to the right first. If the person were to turn to the left first intentionally, the prayer would be invalidated. If he were to do so unintentionally out of forgetfulness, he repeats the taslim. The final salutations consists of the following wording: Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If one were to omit the alif and lam in as-salam or leave it out, or if one were to leave out wa rahmatullahi, the prayer would be invalidated, whether one omitted such intentionally or unintentionally. For example, if a person were to simply say Assalamu alaikum without the alif lam, or one were just to say Assalamu alaikum without wa rahmatullah. It is incumbent that the one who performs the final salutations intend the angels on the right and left. That is to say that when one performs the salutations to the right, one intends to greet the angel on the right, and likewise for the left side. One is to also intend the Muslims praying on the right and left in the congregational prayer. If one is praying alone, one intends the angels only. The author says, these aforementioned things are that which are obligations. If the person praying neglects any of it, their prayer is invalid, whether such neglect was intentional or unintentional.